his ex was a woman from a show called Suits. I didn't know what the show was. I didn't know the woman. Months later, I see.
Why? Because she wasn't able to be in the #1 spot because she married the spare instead of the heir? We should have done.
There is growing outrage after Meghan Markle's own brother begs Prince Harry to cancel the royal wedding.
Before Trevor Engelson ever said a single word, his family already knew. They watched him give his heart, his soul, his everything, and get almost nothing back in return. They saw the cracks forming long before he did, the quiet exhaustion in his eyes, the way he'd bend and twist himself in every direction just to keep her happy. They saw something in Meghan that Trevor's love simply blinded him to. For almost 10 years, they kept silent, watching their son chase a dream that was slowly slipping away. And now, after a decade of silence, Trevor's finally telling the world what really happened. What his family saw from the very beginning, and the confession that shattered everything he thought he knew about the woman he married. The moment that changed the entire story, the moment he realized he had never really been part of her plan. But what was that confession? What did his family see that Trevor couldn't? Oh honey, you better hold on tight, because what's coming next is a story that'll make you question everything about love, loyalty, and the kind of woman Meghan Markle really is. Now let's rewind a bit.
Yup, and I'm like, I go, you think she's gonna close? And he's like, oh, she'll close. And I don't want to get into more about that, but
who exactly was Trevor Engelson, and why does his story matter so much? This wasn't some random boyfriend from her past. This was her husband. 2 years married, 7 years together. That's almost a decade of someone's life. Love, commitment, promises, dreams, all erased like it never even happened. Trevor wasn't some fame-hungry Hollywood man chasing the spotlight. No, he was the man behind the camera, the one who built things quietly, made connections, did the real work. And most importantly, he genuinely loved Meghan, not the glamorous, polished version the world sees today, but the woman behind the mask. Yet from the very beginning, people who knew them said something didn't feel right. Not something loud or dramatic, no, just off. The kind of imbalance you can't quite name, but you feel it. Trevor's family felt it. Friends whispered about it. It was like watching one person pour everything into a cup that never filled up. He gave her time, attention, care, devotion, and she seemed to always be looking past him, eyes fixed on something bigger, something beyond him. And you know how love is. When you're in deep, you don't see the red flags. You make excuses. You tell yourself she's just tired, just busy, just focused on her work. You think if you love hard enough, if you give more, if you sacrifice more, it'll all balance out one day. Trevor did all of that. Lord, he did everything. He rearranged his entire life to fit hers. He changed his schedule, his priorities, his dreams, just so she could chase hers. And for a while, it must have felt like he was doing the right thing. Being the good husband, putting his wife's needs before his own. But the people around him saw it plain as day. They saw a man giving everything and getting almost nothing in return. They saw a woman wearing a wedding ring but already planning her exit. Because this story doesn't start with a divorce or a headline. No, it starts with a man who loved completely, trusted blindly, and realized too late that the woman he'd built his life around wasn't the woman he thought she was. Trevor's not bitter, at least not publicly. He's moved on, he's rebuilt. But pain like that, it never disappears, darling. It just finds a quiet corner in your heart and stays there. His story matters because it's a warning, a reminder of what happens when you love someone who sees you as temporary, when you give everything to someone already halfway out the door. Meghan erased him from her public story like he never existed, like those 10 years were a typo she edited out. But he was real. Their love, at least from his side, was real. So what was it that Trevor's family sensed all those years ago? What was the invisible crack running through that marriage? It all started with one private conversation, one moment that completely changed how he saw their life together. Behind closed doors, in what should have been one of those deep, intimate talks that bring couples closer, Meghan told him something huge, something that shattered every dream he'd quietly built in his heart. She told him she couldn't have children. Imagine that. For a man who loved her so deeply, who saw their future filled with family and laughter and tiny footsteps, that was a devastating confession. But Trevor didn't argue. He didn't question. He didn't get angry. He accepted it like any loving husband would. When someone you love tells you something like that, you don't fight it. You adapt. You reshape your entire life around their truth. And that's exactly what Trevor did. He let go of the dream of being a father because he loved her enough to accept that their love was enough. He made peace with it. He planned a future around it. He figured, we'll travel, we'll focus on our work, we'll build our own kind of happiness. Years passed. That truth became part of their story. But then one day everything changed. Meghan remarried. The world saw her smiling, glowing. And then came the news. She was pregnant. Then came Archie. Then came Lilibet. 2 beautiful children. The very thing she'd told Trevor would never be possible. Can you imagine what that must have felt like? Confusion. Shock. Not anger at first. Just disbelief. Did she lie? Did she really believe she couldn't? Or was that just a convenient excuse back then, when having a child didn't fit into her grand plans? That question haunted him. Because if that wasn't true, then what else had she said that wasn't? The foundation of their marriage, that quiet acceptance he built his love on, suddenly cracked wide open. His family's doubts, his friends' concerns, they all came flooding back. They'd seen something wasn't right, and now he knew why. It all traced back to that one conversation, that one confession that turned out not to be what he believed. That realization hit him harder than the divorce ever did, because this wasn't just about children, it was about honesty, it was about trust, and realizing that the person you loved might have never been fully truthful with you. That kind of pain doesn't just sting, it stays. During Meghan's Suits years, Trevor was the definition of a supportive husband. He flew to Toronto whenever he could, juggling his Hollywood work, canceling meetings, changing flights, doing anything to be by her side. He sent her care packages, notes, reminders that he was thinking of her. He even considered moving projects closer to her just to make the distance bearable. That's not love in theory, that's love in action. That's a man doing everything he can to make it work. But the more he gave, the less she seemed to notice. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, subtle, like watching the light dim room by room. The calls that went unanswered, the messages that got shorter, the visits that started feeling like obligations instead of reunions. Trevor was still talking about their future, while she was quietly building one that didn't include him. He didn't know it yet, but she was already gone. Emotionally, mentally, and soon, physically. She was chasing something bigger, and he just wasn't part of that picture anymore. The things that mattered to Trevor, their marriage, their time together, their plans, were slipping down her list of priorities. Every new opportunity, every new spotlight moment pushed him further back. It wasn't fame that changed her. Fame just revealed what had always been there, a hunger for more. She wasn't growing apart from him. She was outgrowing the idea of him. Friends noticed. They saw how every time he spoke of her, his eyes would light up, but hers looked elsewhere. He was still living in a shared dream. She had already started living in her next chapter. When the end finally came, it wasn't loud or messy. It was quiet, heartbreakingly quiet, like an empty house that's been abandoned for years, finally collapsing. There was no fight, no tears, just a hollow silence. She seemed relieved, like she'd been waiting for the moment to let go. For her, it was a clean break. For him, it was losing the only thing that felt real. He sent love. She sent back the wedding rings, by mail. No conversation, no closure, just an envelope. That's how it ended. And while Trevor was left picking up the pieces, Meghan's world only grew brighter. She didn't slow down, didn't look back. She moved on like it was all just a stepping stone, and honey, maybe it was, because that's what it felt like to him, like he'd been part of her climb, not her life. And the cruelest part? Watching her build everything they once dreamed of. Just with someone else. Watching her become a mother, a duchess, a global name, when once upon a time she told him those dreams didn't fit. But Trevor's silence spoke louder than words, because deep down, he knew. Some people love for real, and some people love for gain. And he finally saw which one he'd married. She had rewritten her life like he'd never existed. Every trace of him, gone. And for Trevor, that was the cruelest twist of all. To love someone so deeply, to give them years of your life and then watch as they pretend you were never even there. The world only saw the glamorous Meghan, the woman in designer gowns, the smile that hid 1,000 secrets. But Trevor saw the woman behind all that, the one who knew exactly how to use charm like a weapon and silence like a shield. He realized too late that her exits were always planned. She never stumbled out of relationships, she strategically walked out of them. People close to him said what hurt most wasn't the loss, but the ease with which she moved on. She didn't mourn, she didn't break, she didn't even pause. She'd been emotionally gone long before the marriage ended. That's why when the headlines came, when the cameras flashed, she looked so free, because she'd already detached long ago. For Trevor, the aftermath was like watching his own ghost. He'd built a life around her, and suddenly it was like that life had never existed. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just numb. Because how do you fight with someone who's already rewritten history? How do you defend yourself against a story where you've been erased? In time, he stopped trying. He found new projects, new people, new purpose. But there were nights when the past still whispered. The laughter, the promises, the version of her he fell in love with. It all came back like a movie he couldn't stop replaying. He'd look back and realize that the marriage hadn't ended suddenly. It had faded, one unreciprocated gesture at a time. And when it was over, she didn't leave heartbreak behind. She left emptiness. Trevor eventually learned the hardest truth of all. Some people don't love you for who you are. They love you for where you can take them. And once you've served your purpose, they move on without a glance. But in the end, Meghan's silence said more than any confession ever could. She erased him, but she couldn't erase the truth. Because the truth, darling, always finds its way back, no matter how carefully someone tries to bury it. And Trevor, he may have been the chapter she deleted, but he'll always be the part of the story the world will never forget.